New York Giants are going to the divisional round of the playoffs after defeating the Minnesota Vikings 31-24 out there in Minnesota. What a game. What a game. What a game by Daniel Jones, who was big time, over 300 yards, 301 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, ran for 78 yards. So he was big time. Saquon Barkley, 53 yards rushing, right? Another 56 yards through the air. He was big time. Isaiah Hodgins, another guy off the scrap heap, if you will. He was big time. 8 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown. But the New York Giants are going to the divisional round of the playoffs. Unbelievable. Unbelievable, but not surprising. Look, a lot of people wanted to play the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota Vikings, what, 11-1, 11-0 in one-score games? So this team has been in a lot of close games. They haven't blown anybody out this year, right? They don't blow anybody. They haven't blown a lot of teams out. And again, the Minnesota Vikings have been in a lot of close games and found ways. And you thought maybe possibly after Darius Slayton had that drop that the Minnesota Vikings would find a way. You thought maybe the Vikings would find a way, and they didn't. And that's a credit to the New York Football Giants. I don't know what was going on in that final play there to Hawkinson. I mean, the ball was, it wasn't even close to the first down marker. So I don't know what was going on in that particular situation in terms of Kirk Cousins, who was magical throughout the course of the season and led the league in, comebacks, fourth quarter comebacks there. And so you thought that maybe that magic in Minnesota's magic, the magic that's been in Minnesota throughout the course of the season would continue, but it didn't. And that's a credit to the New York Football Giants. Unreal. No one would have thought, just like the Jaguars yesterday, if the Giants season would have ended today, it would have been perfectly fine. They would have been perfectly fine. They would have been okay, because the reality is this season would have already been a success. Getting to the playoffs was the thing that made the New York Giants season a success. Now this is all gravy, and it's a lot of gravy at this point. A lot of gravy for the New York Giants as they're off to Philadelphia to play the Eagles for the third time this season. Philadelphia beat them early. Philadelphia beat them up early in that first game. First game between the Giants and the Eagles, Philadelphia beat them up. And then the last game of the season, saw them a couple of weeks ago. And that, seeing them a couple of weeks ago could benefit the Giants. But, I think the Eagles are still the better football team. And I think if you're the Eagles, I think you prefer this matchup over, say, the Cowboys or even the Buccaneers for that matter. I think the Giants, are as good as they played today, are not a team that the Philadelphia Eagles are scared of, I don't think. But again, it is difficult. It is hard to beat a team 2 times. It's difficult to even beat them 3. So that's what the Eagles are going to have to do. Eagles are going to have to beat the Giants 3 times if they want to go on. And ultimately, the Giants are going to have to win, of course, if they want to go on. They have to beat the Eagles for the first time this season if they want to go on. And I think, look, Daniel Jones, we could say a lot about Daniel Jones the first few years of his career, but he has proven at this point that maybe possibly he could be a franchise quarterback. I still think it's some fool's gold there, but he has played well enough for the New York Giants to say, you know what, we're going to run with this guy, and he's going to be our franchise quarterback going forward. I think he's done enough to say just that. I think he's done enough to do that, right? I think the Giants are going to find a way to bring him back, and we'll see if it's a good idea or not. But look, Jones was effective today. He was effective. And it had this offense move and had this offense going up and down the field on the Minnesota Vikings and had this team. This team had a lot of success, right? They didn't have much problems. 431 yards of total offense. So they didn't have problems moving the ball against the Minnesota Vikings, and they obviously didn't have problems scoring as they scored 31 points. So that offense was rolling. And Daniel Jones, I was thinking, man, he's taking a lot of hits here. He's getting a lot of carries and taking a lot of hits. Can he hold up taking these many hits? He had 17 carries, right? Daniel Jones had 17 carries tonight. And that's a lot from your quarterback. And I believe Jalen Hurts, when he got hurt against the Bears, I believe he had 17 carries in that particular game. So it's a lot to ask of your quarterback to be able to run the ball 17 times. And there was some design runs there, and there was just some scrambles as well when it came to Daniel Jones and his running the ball against the Vikings tonight. So he did his job, and he was amazing. Jones was amazing. Jones was big time. That's what you want out of your quarterback. You want your quarterback to throw for 300 yards. You want your quarterback to be able to run for 70-plus yards. You want your quarterback to be able to have 2 touchdowns. And most importantly, you want your quarterback to be able to protect the football. And that's what Daniel Jones did tonight. He protected the football, only had no interceptions, no turnovers from Daniel Jones. And that's how you win in the playoffs. You win in the playoffs by protecting the football. You win in the playoffs by doing everything you can to not turn the football over. And that's what the New York Giants did. They didn't turn the football over. So you played a perfect game in that respect, in that aspect of it. And again, you get big-time play from your offense. So the Giants move forward. And I look at this team, and yeah, they played a good game today. But do I think the Giants are a team that can compete in terms of beating the Eagles? I don't think they can beat the Eagles. I don't. And I think if you're the Eagles, again, this is the matchup you want. This is a team I think you are head and shoulders above and head and shoulders better. You're better. You're better than the New York Giants if you're the Philadelphia Eagles. That's your thought. The Eagles believe that they're better than the New York Giants. I think that's their thought. I think they are. I think it's clear that they're better. But the best team doesn't always win in the playoffs, and things sometimes happen in the playoffs. The ball sometimes moves in many crazy, ridiculous ways in the playoffs. So, anything is possible. But I think this Eagle team is better than the Giants. And I think out of all the teams that they could have played, because it would seem like more likely it's going to be the Cowboys. The Cowboys beat the Buccaneers. It's going to be the Buccaneers or the Cowboys or the Giants more than likely, right? And Seattle was also in that mix, but you knew Seattle was going to have a difficult time beating San Francisco. And you knew that the Giants could go into Minnesota and beat the Vikings. Because here's the thing about the Vikings. Yes, they won a lot of games this year, but they won a lot of close games. Minnesota won a lot of close games and was 11-0 coming into this one in those close games, right? 13-win team. This is a 13-win team, the Minnesota Vikings. So this is not a bad football team, but this was a team, yes, that won a lot of close games. So you knew, if you were the Giants, you were hoping that the 49ers would get that second seed so you wouldn't have to go to San Francisco and play the Niners. You knew your best opportunity to advance in these playoffs were to play the Minnesota Vikings. You knew that was your best opportunity. And that was their best opportunity. They took advantage of that opportunity today. That was their best chance. That was their best chance. Happy football Sunday, brother, for sure. Same to you. A lot of great football today. And again, you knew their best chance. You knew New York's best chance to advance wasn't against the 49ers. You knew their best chance to advance was against these Minnesota Vikings. And these two teams played in the regular season. And just in typical fitting Minnesota fashion, the Vikings won at the buzzer with a Greg Joseph 61-yard field goal. So you knew that the New York Giants' best chance to advance in these playoffs was against these Minnesota Vikings. So when they drew the Minnesota Vikings, I'm sure there was a lot of excitement in New York City and a lot of excitement in that Giants locker room because they faced this team and they almost beat this team. So, and they knew they can compete with this team. And they did just that. Obviously, they competed, they played hard, and ultimately they won. And so the New York Giants now got the matchup they wanted, and they go on. They got the matchup they wanted. And again, just like I said yesterday, when it came to the Jaguars, same deal, same situation. Them winning the AFC South, them getting themselves in the playoffs was a win. That was it. That season became a success the moment they beat the Titans. And in the moment the New York Giants beat the Indianapolis Colts and clinched the playoff spot, that's when their season became a success. That's when the season became a success. The moment they went in, they beat Indy, beat them up, and advanced to the playoffs. You knew, and clinched the spot to the playoffs, I should say. You knew at that point, that moment, that time, Brian Dable, Joe Shane, New York Giants organization, they were all happy and excited for the opportunity just to be in the playoffs. So that was the one thing, that was the check. And at that point, season stamped success. At this point, at this time, at this moment, it's time to double stamp this season as a success. And if they can find a way, which I think would be miraculous, and I would be, I'm not shocked by this outcome. I'm not shocked that the Minnesota Vikings, Kirk Cousins and the Minnesota Vikings lost to the New York Giants. I'm not shocked by this outcome. I don't think there's anybody that's really shocked. No one's saying, wow, the New York Giants beat the Minnesota Vikings. I don't think it's any wow here. It's something that some people expected. It was a lot of people's pick over the weekend. They're like, this is the upset pick. This is the pick I'm looking at. This is the thing. This is the game that could be the upset. A lot of people are looking at this game and saying this could be the upset special, right? But no one is shocked. I don't think anybody's saying, wow, the New York Giants beat the Minnesota Vikings. Woo, that's a shocker. No one was shocked by that. And so the New York Giants winning this game is not a surprise. Now, if they go into Philadelphia and beat the Philadelphia Eagles, now I'll be shocked. Now I'll be surprised. Now I'll be amazed. I'd be amazed, shocked, and surprised if they go into Philadelphia and beat the Philadelphia Eagles. I'd be surprised. Because I look at this Minnesota Viking team. Yes, they won 13 games. It's hard to win 13 games in this league. It's hard to win one game in the NFL, let alone 13, right? It's hard. Saquon Barkley wanted to win. You saw it. You definitely saw that with Barkley. Barkley was a guy who really wanted this, so excited to make the playoffs. I mean, heck, he was a part of this team, a lot of 10-loss seasons. He was a part of that. So he wanted to taste the playoffs. He's tasted it now, played well, and now he advances along with Daniel Dimes and the rest of the New York Giants. But you look at this game, and it was like, well, Minnesota, 13 wins, 13-4, yes. But they won a lot of close games. It wasn't always pretty, and they won it late and a lot of times. I mean, and so you knew this team wasn't unbeatable. You knew this was a game that the Giants could get. You knew it. And I know, I think a lot of people are going to look at this game and they're going to look at the Giants and they're going to look at Week 18 against the Eagles and they're going to say, well, the Giants played the Eagles with their second and third stringers and they played them close and almost beat them. I think people are going to look at that and maybe have some optimism for the New York Giants. But I don't. Again, that's just. I think we need to look at the game that they played at MetLife Stadium a little more than the one that we saw in Week 18, right? And the hope is for the Eagles that Jalen Hurts will be 100% healthy, or not. I don't think he's going to be 100% healthy at this point, but more healthier, I should say, than he was in Week 18. In Week 18, you could tell he was not completely healthy. But the division round, he gets 2 more weeks to rest up and get that shoulder right. So the hope is if you're the Eagles, that Jalen Hurts is back healthy and ready to go. And as healthy as he's going to be. I don't think he's going to be 100% healthy. This is the vibe you get. He's not going to be 100% healthy going forward. I know Nick Sirianni was saying after that game how sore Jalen Hurts was. He said that earlier. He said that this week as well, talking about how sore Jalen Hurts was. So I don't think this guy is going to be completely healthy come next Saturday or Sunday whenever these two teams play. But I think he's going to be healthy enough where you can see other parts of that offense and you can see him running more, maybe some more design runs. You didn't see any of those design runs in that Week 18 game. I think it was a matter of Jalen Hurts just getting on the field, clinching the number 1 seed and getting that bye and getting that, 2 more weeks worth of rest. So I think if you're the Eagles, you're hoping that this game happens on Sunday again, and just another day to get Jalen Hurts completely healthy, completely rested up, and ready to go against the New York Giants. But we shall see. This should be fun. Third time's a charm, maybe, for the Giants. And again, NFC East battle, NFC East clash. That's always fun. Right down the turnpike, the New York Giants go. So that should be fun. That should be exciting. Should be good time. Should be a good game. I think the Eagles dominate. I really do. I think the Giants, like the Jaguars, again, I think those two teams shot their load. I think that's it. I think that's it. I don't expect those teams to move forward. I think, they had – this is their moment. This is their time, and they're going to look back at this game and be happy and excited about the future and about the possibilities. of what's going to happen going forward. If you're the Minnesota Vikings, you got to keep Kirk Cousins, right? We keep throwing Kirk Cousins out there. If you're the Minnesota Vikings, look, Kirk Cousins is gonna put some numbers up, right? The numbers are going to be beautiful. They're going to look great. They're going to be exciting at times. Justin Jefferson and those guys. But at the end of the day, do you trust Kirk Cousins if you're the Minnesota Vikings? Clearly, absolutely not. I don't think you can, right? I don't care how many comebacks he had this year. I don't care, right? At some point, at some time, we're going to have to just say what he is. Guy can put up numbers, right? A guy can make some plays from time to time, look special from time to time. But at the end of the day, he is what he is. He is who he is. And that's just that when it comes to Kirk Cousins. It's just who it is, what it is. And there's really nothing to talk about when it comes to Kirk Cousins. It's just who he is. And again, the Minnesota Vikings, you win 13 games. You should advance in the playoffs, right? This is a disappointment for the Minnesota Vikings. It's a clear disappointment for the Minnesota Vikings. You win 13 games and you go out in the first round in your own building. You lose in your own building to the 9-7-1 New York Giants. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. It's just not acceptable for the Minnesota Vikings to go out in the first round. Here's the thing. We looked at it earlier in the day with the Bills and the Dolphins, right? And there was a moment in time when you felt like Tony Romo was saying to Jim Nantz, you felt like maybe the Bills were a little tight. They were getting a little nervous there because the pressure was on Buffalo. Pressure wasn't on the Miami Dolphins earlier today. The pressure was on the Bills to advance, right? Today, the pressure wasn't on the New York Giants. The pressure was on the Minnesota Vikings to advance. The Giants already had a successful season. The Minnesota Vikings, for them to be a success, they had to win today, right? They had to win today, and they had to advance, and they had to make a deep playoff run. I think if you win 13, look, in the NFL, there's no guarantees that you're going to be able to get to the Super Bowl. There's no guarantee that you're going to win 13 games in a season. So when you win 13 games in a season, you got to do something about that. You got to do something about that. And the same thing goes for the Philadelphia Eagles. 14 games. You win 14 games in the season. You're the number one seed. You're the bye. You got home field advantage throughout. You got to do something about that. And doing something about that means you got to advance to the Super Bowl. So for the Eagles, it's Super Bowl or bust this season. This season is not a success for the Eagles if they lose next week to New York Giants. No. Can't be. It can't be a success when you win 14 games. It can't be. So it's not a success for the Eagles. So they got to win. And the pressure, you could say, is on the Eagles more so than the New York Giants going into next week. But again, I just think, and look, we saw today Dolphins, well, even like we look at the 49ers and the Seahawks, right? Third time those two teams played. Seattle was competitive in that first half. And then ultimately, the 49ers overwhelmed them. Brock Purdy and those boys overwhelmed them in the second half. But they were competitive in that first half and had a 17-16 lead at the break. Competitive. Today, the Miami Dolphins, Skylar Thompson, your third-string quarterback. No Tua, no Teddy Bridgewater. You had Skylar Thompson playing for you. And again, Skylar Thompson, did whatever he could do. But Mike McDaniel, he had a hard time calling the game, getting these plays out in a timely manner. So many delayed game penalties, but that's that. But I mean, again, played the Bills for a third time, and it was a little bit more competitive. So you could argue, just based on what we've seen, in these last 2 days with these teams who played each other 3 times, that maybe that third time could be maybe a little bit more competitive. And I know the Dolphins and Bills played some competitive games this season. I know the Dolphins beat the Bills earlier in the season. But again, it would have took a huge effort for Miami to win today without Tua. And that's unfortunate, them being without Tua, because they had Tua today. Who knows what could happen? Because that offense was prolific at times throughout the course of the season with Tua in there, with Tyreek Hill and Waddle and those boys. So, again, credit to the Bills. They got it done. And the credit to the New York Football Giants, who have found a way, who rode the arm and the legs of Danny Dimes, Daniel Jones, Unreal, right? If you would have said maybe even last year that Daniel Jones would A, lead the New York Giants to the playoffs, and then B, throw for over 300 yards in the playoffs, 302 yards and 2 touchdowns with no interception to be exact, and then ran for 78 yards as well. If you would have said Daniel Jones would have done that at the end of last year, a lot of people would have said you were crazy. A lot of people would have said you were crazy. And I think that's the same thing even with the Philadelphia Eagles and Jalen Hurts. If you would have said to me that Jalen Hurts, after what we saw against Tampa Bay in the playoffs, that Jalen Hurts would come back and throw 22 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, have 13 touchdowns on the ground, combined for have a combined 35 touchdowns, right? That is, no one would have thought that. No one would have thought that. No one, right? No one. So it's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. But the New York Giants, man, I mean, wow. Like, what a performance by this team. What a performance by the Giants to be able to go in to Minnesota, to be able to dominate, to be able to get the job done, to be able to win in Minnesota, right? You're watching that game and you're thinking at first, as the game's going along, who's the team that has 13 wins and who's the team that only has 9 wins, right? That was your thought process as you're watching that particular game, because it was clear that the Giants were just as good and matched up. And sometimes it comes down to matchups, right? So it's just styles make fights. And just like in the boxing ring, sometimes in the boxing ring, some guys just match up better with you than other guys, right? It's just a matchup. Styles make fights. And the Giants' style matches up with the Vikings' style, which meant we had a close game today in Minnesota. But every play that Daniel Jones, he had Darius Slayton wide open. If Slayton catches the ball, Vikings probably don't get the ball back because it seemed like he had a lot of room and was going to be able to get that first down. So, and look at this from this standpoint, right? And I say I still have questions about Daniel Jones in terms of whether or not he's a franchise quarterback. But look what he's working with in terms of his skill position players, in terms of the people that he's throwing to, right? Isaiah Hodgins and Darius Slayton, right? I mean, it goes on and on. Richie James. I mean, come on. He's throwing to those guys, and he's still having a lot of success. That's telling. Because if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, what is the difference between the Philadelphia Eagles last year on offense in comparison to this year? A.J. Brown. So the Eagles got a number 1 wide receiver in A.J. Brown, and then ultimately it opened things up for everybody, right? So Eagles essentially have 2 number 1 receivers when it comes to Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown. Those guys are big-time wideouts. So if you maybe the thought is, and Kenny Golladay was supposed to be that number 1 wide receiver that Daniel Jones needed, cherished, and wanted. But ultimately, we see with Golladay, it's been a lot of struggles, and he's having a hard time just getting on the field because he hasn't been effective. But I say all to say this. If the Giants in this offseason finds a way to get Daniel Jones a number 1 caliber wide receiver, things change. I mean, they tried with Kadarius Toney, who they drafted in the first round there. Dave Gettleman drafted him, but it didn't work. It didn't work, and ultimately they moved him on. It didn't work. It didn't work. So the Giants have been trying to find that number 1 wide receiver. And again, it worked wonders for Jalen Hurts. Now, Jalen Hurts did put that work in the offseason, became a more accurate passer. His deep ball is beautiful. He's thrown a beautiful deep ball throughout the course of the season. So it helped that Jalen Hurts put in the work, but it also helped that he got an A.J. Brown, a number 1 wide receiver next, with him to help him have the level of success that he's having this season. So again, credit to Daniel Jones because he's not throwing to the who's in the National Football League. He's not. And some of these guys may have a hard time playing on other rosters. So that is a credit to Daniel Jones. That is a credit to Brian Dable, Mike Kafka, offensive coordinator for the Giants. It's credit to those guys, putting these guys in position, putting Daniel Dimes in position to be successful. I heard Jay Glazer say on the pregame show that the Giants are pretty much certain to bring back Saquon Barkley and bring back Daniel Jones. At this point, at this time, that almost seems like a foregone conclusion. I know that Daniel Jones isn't Brian Dable's guy, but again, it appears that it's a foregone conclusion that those boys, Barkley, Jones, will be back for the New York Giants next season. So that's exciting. If you're the Giants, the future looks bright for the New York Giants going forward. Brian Dable seems like he has the goods in terms of being a solid head coach. And here's the thing with the NFL. You can turn things around in one season. It happens, right? It happens. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles in 2016, and then you look what they did in 2017. 2016, Carson Wentz's rookie season, they putting things together. And ultimately the following year, right, it made some good free agent signings along the way, and eventually they found a way to get to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. So you could turn this thing around in the NFL in 1 year. You can go from if you see. Here's the thing with the Eagles: they hit on their quarterback, meaning Jalen Hurts. They were fortunate that they hit on the quarterback position in the draft. They got lucky in some respect because they had Carson Wentz already there. A year into his new contract, and Howie Roseman and Doug Peterson, the coach at the time, they made the decision to draft Jalen Hurts. And it turns out that's keeping the train moving in Philadelphia, and it's put them in position again to possibly get to the Super Bowl. And again, I said this yesterday when it comes to the Jaguars, 2 games away from getting to the Super Bowl. No one would have ever said that the New York Giants would be 2 games away from getting to the Super Bowl. No one when this season started. No one. A team coming off what? A series of 10 lost seasons, right? No one expected this team with Daniel Jones to be what they become and do what they're doing. No one. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the thing that you see a lot of times in the NFL. You're going to see surprises. It happens. There's going to be surprises. There's going to be surprise teams. There are going to be teams you're going to be like, wow, I can't believe that this team is doing what they're doing. I can't believe that this team is advancing deep into the playoffs. I can't believe you're going to have those moments in the NFL. And so the Giants were happy. And Daniel Jones said that this week, like, we're not just happy to be here. We're not. Like, we're here, but we ain't just happy to be here. We're not, we want to advance. We're not just happy to be here. No, we want more. We want more. And Daniel Jones and the New York Giants have more. They weren't happy with just being here. They were happy, and their goal was to advance. And it showed. The New York Giants they're not just happy to be in the dance. They wanted to get a couple numbers, right? They're not just happy being in the dance. And here's what Daniel Jones said earlier this week.
House money has been thrown around. At this point, how does it feel in the locker room going into this game? Are there expectations that you're going to go in there and win, or are you a little looser because you've come so far and maybe exceeded expectations this season?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely not satisfied just to have made the playoffs. That's not how we see it as a group. We were confident in our team dating back to training camp and knew what we were able to accomplish. So, we're by no means satisfied just to be in the playoffs. We expect to play well and to win, and that's our expectation every week. That doesn't change us.
And that's what Daniel Jones said that earlier this week. He said that this week, that the expectation wasn't just to go to the dance. The expectation was to be in the dance, have some success in the dance, get a couple phone numbers at the dance, and have a good time and advance. And that was what the Giants were looking to do coming into this week. And obviously, you're not going to say, like, I'm not going to expect Daniel Jones to answer that question and say, you know what, we're just happy to be here. No, he's a competitor. He's a NFL football player. He's not going to just say, I'm just happy to be here. I didn't expect him to say that. right? No one expected Daniel Jones to say, yes, I'm just happy to be here. I'm just happy to be in the playoffs. No, every competitor, anybody that's going to step on the football field is going to say, I'm looking to advance, I'm looking to win, and I'm looking to get to the Super Bowl. Now, we've seen the last time Giants won a playoff game was in 2011. So, and that season, Eli and those boys won a Super Bowl. So we've seen the Giants be in this position when they go into the playoffs. They're hot. They're playing some big-time football. And there was a guy by the name of Eli Manning who led them to a Super Bowl. Can that happen this time? I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked. I'd be shocked. I would be shocked. Throughout the course of the season, I watched this Giants team, and I'm thinking, they're not that good. There's not a lot of talent on this roster. But somehow, some way, they win in football games. And, it got off to a 6-2 start, 7-3 start at one point in the season. And you're like, oh, maybe the Giants are okay. I mean, they go into Tennessee. They beat the Titans in week 1. And you're like, okay, maybe. But, they find ways and they compete. And they competed throughout the course of the season. Again, that's your coaching staff. That's coaching. That's coaching, getting your team prepped up, ready, prepared to go out there and be successful. That's coaching. That's Brian Dable and those boys. Wink Martindale and those boys. That's them. That is them getting those boys coached up and ready to go. I mean, you have moments in this season where you're thinking, wow, maybe the Giants are for real. And then, they come back to earth. And again, I don't believe they're for real. I never thought they were for real. I still don't think they're for real, but I still think they're real enough where obviously they advance to the divisional round. And obviously, they can win some football games. They're good enough to do that, clearly. And Daniel Jones has proven that you can win with him. Now, to what level you can win with him, that's up for discussion. But he's proven that you can win. You can win a playoff game with Daniel Jones. That is proven. You can get to the playoffs with Daniel Jones. That is proven, right? He has at least proven that. And so we'll see what happens going forward. He's limiting the turnovers. I mean, Daniel Jones was a fumble machine earlier on in his career. You touch him, he fumbles. You blow on him, he fumbles. That was Daniel Jones earlier in his career. And now he's found a way to, doing a better job of protecting the football, doing a much better job. Funny, when Daniel Jones was drafted, everybody was like, wow, well, why did the Giants draft him over the late Dwayne Haskins, right? Why did they draft him over him? Should have drafted Dwayne Haskins. And obviously, clearly, the Giants knew what they were doing, right? I mean, no one expected Dwayne Haskins to pass away the way he passed away. And again, God rest his soul. But it's just amazing. Like at the time, people were roasting the Giants for that choice, that decision to draft Daniel Jones over Dwayne Haskins at that time. So it's amazing what a difference a few years makes. Amazing what a difference a year makes. And it's going to be interesting because I look at this game and I look at both of these quarterbacks. And again, some people, people had questions about both of these quarterbacks. People had questions about Jalen Hurts after that performance against the Buccaneers in the playoffs last year. He wasn't very good. He wasn't good at all, actually, right? People had questions about him. And people had questions about Daniel Jones over these last 3 seasons until now, right? He's starting to answer these questions. He's starting to get some good answers now in terms of some of these questions. The answers are starting to be a little better at this point when it comes to Daniel Jones. But, he's still – I'm not 100% sold on him. But – and I think to it, like I said earlier, I think to a degree he's fool's gold. But he has proven that he can win. So, I mean, the proof in a lot of ways is in the pudding. And in that pudding was 302 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions in this playoff game. Oh, by the way, 78 yards on the ground on 17 carries. Now, that I said earlier, that 17 carries is a lot. I don't think you want your quarterback toting the rock that many times because he's going to open himself up to injury. So I don't think you want your quarterback running the ball 17 times. I don't think that's what you want to see. So I think that number has to come down a little bit. But look, the offense is effective when Daniel Jones is taking off and running and escaping. Now, again, when they played the Eagles last time, I think the Eagles had around 7 sacks, right? And, yeah, you look at the Eagles have more playmakers on both sides of the ball, getting those guys back healthy, and will not be playing vanilla offense game, but we will see. Yes, I agree with you, Willie Thomas, Willie T. Yes, I agree with you. No doubt about it. I don't think I think the Eagles are head and shoulders above the New York Giants. I didn't say that about the Minnesota Vikings. I think the Eagles are head and shoulders. And I don't look at, I said this earlier, I don't look at week 18. I don't look at that game at all. I look at what I saw earlier in the season when the Eagles went into MetLife Stadium and they beat up the Giants. I mean, they got after Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones couldn't escape that pass rush. Hassan Reddick and Hargraves and Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham and those boys got after him. So I look at that game, and Jalen Hurts and that offense was able to move the ball up and down the field with no issues, no problems, and nothing, right? So people want to talk about, oh, the Giants played the Eagles tough with second and third stringers. Oh, yeah, that's exciting. Whoa, the Giants almost beat the Eagles with Webb as their quarterback. Oh, so exciting, right? Some people read into that game. I am not reading any single solitary thing into that game. As long as Jalen Hurts is a little more healthy than he was the other night, it should be no issue. People forget 48-22 was the score of that game. 48-22, and it wasn't at any point at any time close. It wasn't at any point at any time close. Jalen Hurts had an easy day. Miles Sanders was able to run the ball effectively. I mean, Philadelphia had 253 yards rushing on the ground and 4 touchdowns, right? So they had no issues moving the ball. A.J. Brown got a touchdown. Devontae Smith got a touchdown, right? They sacked Daniel Jones 7 times in that one. So I don't give the Giants a shot here. I don't. You can argue third time playing them. Maybe that's something that we can look at or pay attention to, or maybe that makes somewhat of a difference, possibly. Who knows? But I thought this was, if you're an Eagles fan, I thought this was the best possible matchup for you. The New York Football Giants. You didn't want to play Dak and the Cowboys because I think the Cowboys have a lot of talent and they're a scary football team if they put it together. The Buccaneers, that was the second team. I think if you're the Eagles, you probably wanted to play. Obviously, you wanted to play either the Giants or the Seahawks initially, but you knew the Seahawks would have a hard time beating the 49ers. But so realistically, you were saying, okay, if I can't play the Seahawks, let me face the Giants. And if I can't face the Giants, let me face the Buccaneers. Right? I think that in that particular order is where you were going if you were an Eagles fan in terms of who you wanted to see in the playoffs. I think that was your thought process. I could be wrong, but I look at it, and that's the way I see it. Like the Giants, either the Seahawks, in that order, Seahawks, Giants, Buccaneers, Cowboys. Because the Cowboys have that roster and have that team where they can go in and play that game. I don't think the Buccaneers have that in them. They're 8-9 for a reason, right? I clearly didn't think the Seahawks had it in them. And I knew the Giants could beat the Vikings, but I don't think I think this is it. This is it. This is it. I don't see the Giants going into Philadelphia and beating the Eagles, right? I think I would be shocked. I would be amazed. I would be stunned. I would be any other word to describe, stunned. That's what I would be. Flabbergasted, right? I just would be, it would be crazy. I just can't see it happen. I can't fathom. And again, anything can happen in the NFL. And I've said this numerous times. In the sport of baseball, in the sport of hockey, and in the sport of football, the best team doesn't always win. In hockey, you can get a hot goaltender, and you can ride a hot goaltender all the way to the Stanley Cup, right? In baseball, you can ride a hot pitcher or a couple of pitchers. You can ride it. Diamondbacks, Schilling, and Johnson. You can ride that all the way to the World Series and win, right? In football, it's a one-game situation. And sometimes teams can play their worst game at the worst time in the worst situation, right? They can happen. You can just have the worst game ever. And the ball bounces funny ways. The ball bounces funny ways. And turnovers are the great equalizer. So football is a game where the best team doesn't always win. It just doesn't happen. Doesn't always win. Eagles are the best team, are the better team than the Giants on paper, and no matter how you look at it. The Eagles are loaded. If they're healthy, they're loaded, right? They got C.J. Gardner-Johnson back. He was only, the guy was having big time season, leading the league in interceptions when he went down. He was big time. This team is loaded. Hopefully Lane Johnson could be healthy for them going forward. You need Lane Johnson there. You need him to be at optimum health. So this is a loaded football team, the Philadelphia Eagles. So if the New York Giants, right, the Eagles are better than the Vikings, right? Right? The Eagles are better than the Minnesota Vikings. So if the New York Giants want to advance, they play well today, they're going to have to play even better next Saturday or Sunday, whenever that game is. They're going to have to play much better because the Eagles are a much better team or not a much better team, but they're a better team than the Vikings. And the Eagles are a much better team than the Giants. So the Giants are going to need some fortune. They're going to need a few things to have to go their way. They're going to need some fumbles. They're going to need Hurts not to be at optimum health. They're going to need all those things for them to win this game because I don't see the matchup favors the Eagles. Again, people forget, we talk about Daniel Jones and his ability to scramble and all that. Eagles locked him up and locked him down, right? They got after Daniel Jones. 7 sacks in that game. The Eagles have a ferocious pass rush. So it's going to be very difficult to keep Hassan Reddick, Javon Hargraves, Fletcher Cox, and those boys off of Daniel Jones. That's not going to be easy. And I don't think they have enough to slow down and limit this Eagles team. You look at that game again, 48-22. Dominating performance by the Eagles from start to finish. Heck, we even saw Gardner Minshew in that game. Gardner Minshew, we didn't get Minshew in that game. But again, it was an easy performance. Actually, Minshew did play late. He did play late. Didn't throw a pass, but he did play late. But it was an easy performance for the Eagles in that particular game. It was one of their easier games. It was one of their easier wins. It was one of the easier wins for the Eagles this season against the Giants out there in MetLife Stadium. Now it's back at the Link, and that crowd is going to be off the chain, off the hook. They're going to be liquored up. They're going to be lathered up. They're going to be excited, and they're going to they're going to be ready to go. They got a couple weeks off to get rested, to get right, to get well, and they're going to be ready to go. And that's going to be difficult. That home crowd, the Eagles feed off their home crowd. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts is 14-1 as a starter this year, 7-1. Eagles are 7-1 at Lincoln Financial Field. Only loss was to the Commanders in a game they probably should have won, right? But and that was one of their worst games they played this year. So, and the Eagles, they're better. This is not the Minnesota Vikings here that the Giants will be playing next week. This is not the Minnesota Vikings. This is the Philadelphia Eagles. And a lot of people are talking about the San Francisco 49ers, and I get it. The San Francisco 49ers, big-time winning streak, winning a lot of games, dominating teams at times. But again, they play in the NFC West. The Eagles played the best division of football. NFC East is probably the best division of football, right? 3 teams from that division are in the playoffs, and the Commanders were pretty close to getting there as well. So NFC East easily could have 4 teams in the playoffs. If Carson Wentz wouldn't have played one of his worst games of the season against the Cleveland Browns, the Washington Commanders could be talking about being in the playoffs as well. So easily that division could have 4 teams in the dance. So the NFC East, the 49ers played in maybe one of the worst divisions of football. Conversely, the Eagles played maybe in one of the best divisions of football. So again, and to get out of that division 14-3, that says something. That says something about this team and this roster and what they bring to the table. 2 of the Eagles' 3 losses were in the NFC East against the Cowboys and against the Commanders, right? And they lost to the Cowboys without Jalen Hurts. And obviously they lost to the Saints, but that's obviously the NFC South. But again, this team, the Philadelphia Eagles, are going to be a big-time football team, and they're loaded. The Eagles are loaded. They got a lot of talent on that roster. And so we could talk about, we didn't see design runs from Hurts. We didn't see a completely healthy Jalen Hurts. We're going to see a much more healthier Hurts come Saturday or Sunday. So that it's going to be I think a game the Eagles are. This is the matchup. If Nick Sirianni was honest about who he wanted to face, I think he'd be happy with this matchup. I think Nicky would be Nicky Sirianni would be okay with this matchup. I think he'd be fine with this matchup. And so, but credit to the Giants. And we could talk about their season ending next week. The game hasn't been played yet, so anything can happen. Anything's possible. So, but you look at the Giants and what they've done this season, right? To be able to win 9 games, to be able to go to the playoffs, to be able to advance in the playoffs, that's big time. That's a big, like, there's levels to this, right? Certain teams have different levels, right? At this point, Chiefs, Bills, Bengals, even the Ravens to a degree, if they get Lamar Jackson back, those teams are looking to get to the Super Bowl, and anything short of that would not be a successful season. Just not. You look at the Eagles, you look at the 49ers, right? Those teams, Cowboys, Buccaneers, them not making a Super Bowl would make their season not a success. Just not a success. It wouldn't be a success. The Vikings, another team that wanted to make it to the Super Bowl. But teams like the Seahawks and the Giants, them getting to the playoffs was it for them. Their season was a success at that point. But in the NFC, Philly, 49ers, Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Dallas, those 5 teams, those 5 of the 7 teams in the playoffs in the NFC, those 5 teams, anything short of a Super Bowl is not a success. That's it. In the AFC, considering what happened with Tua, the Dolphins winning today would have been a success, but I think the Dolphins wanted to move forward. But the Jacksonville Jaguars, anything for them just winning a game made their season a success. So now at this point, the Giants are playing with house money. This is house money at this point. They're playing with house money. They got here in the playoffs, house money. Them winning today, house money. It's a lot of house money at this point for the New York Football Giants. And that's exciting. Look, this is exciting. If you're Brian Dable, the first year, taking over this program, your first year as a head coach, and you get to the playoffs, and again, you win in the playoffs, that's exciting. That's exciting. I mean, the Giants have not had a lot of success over the years, whether it's Ben McAdoo, whether it's Joe Judge, right? They haven't had success. Those guys haven't been good, and the situations haven't been good for the New York Giants. So for them to get to this point is a win. It's a win. But they want to keep on winning. And Daniel Jones said it earlier this week, as I played earlier. He didn't just come here to dance. I'm in the dance. Correct. Congratulations. Now make something happen. And that's what Daniel Jones and the New York Giants did. They made something happen. So the Giants move on and the Vikings go home, right? Kirk Cousins keeps going home, keeps going home, and keeps going home, and keeps going home, and goes home. I mean, it just, right? He just keeps going home. And at some point, the Minnesota Vikings are going to have to determine and decide, is this guy the guy that we can win a Super Bowl with? Is he that guy? Can I win a Super Bowl with Kirk Cousins? That is the question they have to answer. That's the question they're going to keep on having to answer. So Kirk Cousins, 34 years old at this point, and he just, I mean, at what point you got to get something in the pipeline. You got to get something in the pipeline. You got to get yourself a quarterback who can be your franchise quarterback. Because the road, it might be time. I mean, he's not O'Connell's guy. And it might be time. He's Mike Zimmer's guy. It might be time for the Minnesota Vikings to say, you know what? We got to figure this out. We got to find a quarterback. They thought they maybe had something maybe in Kellen Mond a couple years ago, who they drafted. I believe it drafted in the 2nd round, I think. Not sure off the top of my head, but ultimately that didn't work out for the Minnesota Vikings. But they so he would have been a quarterback they could have had in the pipeline, right? And again, that didn't work out for them. Didn't work out for him. And so he was a third round pick for the Minnesota Vikings back in 2021. So they were thinking maybe he could be the guy. He could be the heir apparent. He could be the next one, possibly. That didn't work. So they, look, I think, like I said before, I said earlier, when it comes to Kirk Cousins, I think you could trot him out, get you 4,000 yards, get you 20, 30 touchdowns. But he's not going to advance you far into the playoffs. And if he's proven anything, he may have proved just that, right? He's not going to take you far. He's not going to take you far, right? He's not. I mean, they gave him a 3-year, $84 million deal back in 2018, guaranteed money, guaranteed dollars. And, obviously didn't work, didn't go where they wanted to go, and didn't do what they wanted it to do. Just didn't. But again, and he's not Kevin O'Connell's guy. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens, and we'll see what the Minnesota Vikings decide to do when it comes to Kirk Cousins. But it's clear, and I think it was clear, to be honest, I thought it was clear when they signed him initially. Not going to win with Kirk Cousins. You're not. And I think he has proven that. But do I think Kirk Cousins is more than a serviceable quarterback? Yeah, he most definitely is. Kirk Cousins is definitely more than serviceable. He is more than serviceable. A lot of fourth quarter comebacks this year. A lot of 4,500 yards, 29 touchdowns. Did throw 14 interceptions, which is a high number. You like to bring that number down a little bit, but at the end of the day, he did get you 13 wins. He did get you 13 wins, and that's saying something. He did get you the third seed in the NFC, but he didn't get you a playoff game. Didn't get you a win in the playoffs this time around. And the funny thing about the Minnesota Vikings at the time, they had Case Keenum. Case Keenum, made that miracle play against the Saints, and he had the best year of his career and got the Vikings all the way to the NFC Championship game before they got smacked by the Eagles in 2017. But, and the thought was, okay, we're close, and maybe we're a quarterback away from winning a Super Bowl, and maybe Kirk Cousins is that guy that can put us over the top. And they decided to go with Kirk Cousins, and unfortunately, they haven't been back to the NFC Championship game. So Case Keenum has taken them as far as they could go in terms of, the Minnesota Vikings. And, this is a team, the Minnesota Vikings over the years, they've just been, the moments you're like, wow, this team, 1998, you point back to that. Randall Cunningham, Chris Carter, Randy Moss, Jake Reed, Robert Smith, and those boys, 15-1, scoring all those points. Randy Moss scoring all those touchdowns. And then Gary Anderson, who was perfect all year long, misses a field goal. And then ultimately you lose to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC Championship game. And it's like, wow, just so much bad luck when it comes to the Minnesota Vikings and them putting themselves in position. Bud Grant, got them to Super Bowl 4 times? And they couldn't win a championship then. And again, it's just they can't put it together. And then, at some point, again, Kirk Cousins is not a young man. Kirk Cousins is not a young man. So they got to figure out what they want to do with him. They got to figure out, is he the guy? 34 years old. Okay, he'll be 35 by the start of the season next year. So you got to find somebody. You got to get somebody in the pipeline. Whether you get somebody in the pipeline or you sign a veteran or find a veteran, because Derek Carr could be out there, and you think Derek Carr's an upgrade over Kirk Cousins, probably about similar, probably about the same. But Kirk Cousins had an opportunity this time, right? Look, you got to win. You got to win this game. You can't lose this game. You can't lose this game, right? You can't lose to the New York Giants in your building. You can't lose. Cannot do it. Can't. So for them, to lose this game is unacceptable. And for their season, after winning 13 games, to end in the first round of playoffs is, again, unacceptable. So, Giants not the Giants, the Vikings got to figure some things out. But, obviously Justin Jefferson was elite. Dalvin Cook is big time, right? Hawkinson was a great acquisition, got from the Lions, and he was good today. But it wasn't enough. And Kirk Cousins had the ball in his hand with an opportunity to tie the game, and he couldn't get the job done. Again, a weird route. I don't know what the deal was, but that was totally behind the sticks. It was 4th and 8. Hawkinson, ran it. I don't know if it was a situation. I don't know what happened there, but he was clearly far away from getting a first down. Far away from getting a first down. And again, so that was a weird route, weird play call, weird everything. Just weird. Just weird. And it didn't work out. It didn't work out. But again, credit to New York Giants, man. New York Giants advance. New York Giants move on. Make sure you like, subscribe this video. New York Giants move on. New York Giants are going to the Divisional Round of playoffs. New York Giants are going to Philadelphia to face Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Miles Sanders, and the Philadelphia Eagles. That's not going to be easy. I think the season ends, which is okay. I think any Giants fan, if I would have told a Giants fan, at the beginning of this season, would you sign up for 9 wins and a playoff win, 1 playoff win? Would you sign up for that? I think everybody would be rushing to sign up for that. So this season for the Giants is a success. It was a success. No matter what happened today, it was a success. If they were lost, if the Vikings would have came back, scored a touchdown at the end of regulation, and then won in overtime, Giants' season still was a success. And again, if they go to Philadelphia and get blown out, which I think could happen, they get blown out in Philly, still a success. Still a success. So they're playing with house money at this point. This is house money, right? This is house money. There's nothing like playing with house money, right? That is the best feeling in the world, to play with house money. Oh, I'm good. I'm not touching anything. This is house money. House money. So credit to the Giants. And look, Daniel Jones has proven this much, that he deserves another opportunity to be the New York Giants quarterback next season. He's proven that, you can win with him. He's proven that you can win. To what level, what degree, that's up for debate. But he has proven to this point, at this moment, at this time, that you can win with him. That's been proven today. That was actually proven at the end of the regular season when he made him led him to the playoffs. He's proven that you can win with him. To what degree? Now that's the question you got to ask. But he has proven that you can win with him. And that's all you can ask for. That's all you can ask for. Your quarterback to put you in position to win. And his ability to run the ball. Like Daniel Jones was running the ball very well today. Like he's a tough customer. He's a tough customer. He's tough. He played like a warrior today. He played big time. Danny Dimes, 379 yards of total offense, 301 in the air, 78 on the ground, 2 touchdowns. Danny Dimes. Dimes has proven that you can win with him. Daniel Dimes. He's proven that you can win. And that's, no one expected that. No one expected that. No one. Daniel Jones was everything that you wanted him to be, and then some. He's everything. He was everything you wanted him to be, and then some. And he is one of the biggest reasons the New York Giants are in the playoffs, and one of the biggest reasons the Giants will advance in these playoffs. It's Daniel Jones. Saquon Barkley, Those boys, right? It seems like the Giants are tied to those boys going forward. Barkley coming off the injury, it's proven that he's back. He's healthy. And Barkley, man, this dude's a home run hitter. He's a big time back. He can obviously in and out of the backfield. He's big time. And he demonstrated that today. He showed that today. His ability to catch the ball, his ability to run the ball. He showed that today. So there's happy times in New York City. There was some bad football in New York over the years with the Jets and the Giants. The Jets were halfway decent this year, and the New York Football Giants are in the playoffs. The New York Football Giants advance in the playoffs. So in terms of football for New York, the state of New York, the city of New York City, should be happy times. But I think the season ends next week in Philadelphia. It ends against the Eagles. It ends against the team who's better than them. The New York Philadelphia Eagles are better. They're better, right? They're loaded. The New York Giants are solid. New York Giants are not the Philadelphia Eagles. New York Giants don't have the talent that the Philadelphia Eagles have. They don't. They don't have that talent. They don't have what the Philadelphia Eagles have. They don't have it. So we'll see how this thing plays out. Again, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're about to get out of here. Please like, please subscribe, please support the channel, right? And again, throughout the course of these playoffs, we're going to be popping on. We're going to be talking some of these games throughout the course of these playoffs. So a fun day so far. The Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills. Bills win 34-31. Mike McDaniel can't get a play call in to save his life in a timely manner. So that, the Dolphins struggled there. And the New York Football Giants went into Minnesota. Danny Dimes, Saquon, right? Isaiah Hodgins. Those boys made plays. And the New York Giants move on. So at this point, right? This is an upset. It's upset. Giants beating the Vikings is an upset. Not surprising, not shocking, not any of those things, but it is an upset. Buffalo almost were upset by the Dolphins. They competed. Credit to the Jacksonville Jaguars coming back 27-0. And then the 49ers handled their business. So, again, the game I'm looking forward to most to is tomorrow in terms of Super Wildcard weekend was the Buccaneers and the Cowboys. I'm looking forward to that. Could be Brady's last dance, last chance to advance and ultimately get to a Super Bowl. I mean, I don't think, every time Brady goes elsewhere, but I think at this point, Brady is starting to finally act his age. It took some time for that to happen. He's starting to fall off the cliff, and maybe he's near the edge. 45 years old. You could argue maybe, I don't know his family situation, but argue that maybe he chose football over his family situation. Who knows? But it's like, man, like at some point you got to call it quits. And, I don't see any scenario where the Buccaneers can make it to the Super Bowl. They just don't have that talent. That first year Brady came, he was the missing piece. And Jameis Winston the year before threw 30 picks, and then Brady came in 2020, and he showed what a competent quarterback and what it could do for that team because they had the skill positions. They had talent, right? And they had a lot of talent. They added Fournette that year. They still had Evans and Godwin. They added Antonio Brown late in that season. So they had a lot of talent out there in Tampa Bay. They just needed a quarterback who wouldn't throw 30 interceptions. And Tom Brady is not going to throw 30 interceptions, right? So credit to the Buccaneers and Tom Brady winning that particular year. But again, that's not, this team is not that. This team is far from that. This team is not that, right? Let's be clear about that. The 2020 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 2022 version of them ain't that team. That's just without a doubt. But again, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, support the channel. And again, we're going to be popping on throughout the course of these playoffs. Again, fun playoffs, fun games today, fun games yesterday, and we'll see what happens in the nightcap tonight. Again, like, subscribe. Later.